number of countries, including Turkey and Russia, have called for restraint, while Jordan warned of the danger of regional escalation. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said he refused to speculate on reports, saying it was a developing situation and that he would confirm the details with allies. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, meanwhile, did not confirm reports that Israel warned the US about the attack, but said that the US was not involved in any offensive. He also said that the G7 is committed to de-escalation in the Middle East.
First, the G7 condemned the unprecedented Iranian attack on Israel. Unprecedented in scope and scale. Scope because it was a direct attack on Israel from Iran. Scale because it involved more than 300 munitions, including ballistic missiles. We're committed to Israel's security. We're also committed to de-escalating, to trying to bring this tension to a close.
Well, for some analysis, we can bring in Scott Lucas, a professor of U.S. and international politics at the University College Dublin's Clinton Institute. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. First, your reaction to this strike on Iran. Do you believe this is the retaliation that Israel had been threatening?
This is the Israeli retaliation for last week's Iranian missile and drone attacks. But just as those Iranian attacks were demonstration attacks, they were designed not to cause that much damage. They were signaled in advance to the Israelis. So Israel strikes on Isfahan, probably on Iranian bases in the province this morning, were also limited and choreographed. There were warnings that were sent out in advance so that airlines, commercial airlines such as Fly Dubai and Emirates, diverted their planes out of the area. The Iranians would have had time to prepare for this. The Israelis have struck these bases before. They struck them in 2021 and in 2023, aiming at missile and drone workshops. So while Israel is saying to Iran, look, you can't attack us without some type of response, just as Iran said the same thing to Israel, both countries have done so in such a way to step back from direct confrontation.
And given that, do you think that this is the last that we're going to have for this particular exchange?
Well, it's the last in terms of a direct response, but the issue here is that the indirect war between Israel and Iran has been going on for years. Israel has been attacking Iranian targets in Syria for more than a decade, and it has been assassinating Iranian commanders in that country since December. Indeed, that was the immediate cause of Iran's belated response when the assassination of 7 of those senior officers, including Iran's top officer for Syria and Lebanon, occurred on Iranian embassy grounds on April 1st. So will Israel continue those targeted assassinations? Will they also continue targeted assassinations of Hezbollah officials in Lebanon? Will they continue cyber operations or return to covert operation against Iran's nuclear program? So we've stepped back from like the headline of a direct military hot war, but this more complex and arguably more persistent indirect war will be continuing between the two countries.
And Israel has officially refused to comment on these latest strikes, but Israel's hard-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir posted on social media suggesting that Israel was behind it and criticizing it as weak. What divisions within Israel have been raised by this latest back and forth with Iran?
First, Israeli officials have let it be known to U.S., Israeli outlets, some international outlets, that yes, this was our attack, even if it won't be officially admitted. And indeed, Ben-Gvir has been criticized within Israel for letting the cat out of the bag, so to speak, by criticizing an attack that wasn't being publicly acknowledged. I think what it shows is that the Israeli War Cabinet and the wider cabinet are not all in agreement in terms of the line to be taken with Iran. But at this point, Ben-Gvir, as National Security Minister, he's sort of an outlier. Not just the United States, but the international community got the message across to Israel within hours of the Iranian attacks. Do not hit Iran with a direct attack with missiles. And that is what has transpired. Again, the open question is, putting aside hard-right activists like Ben-Gvir, is will the majority of the Israeli cabinet, and especially the war cabinet, will they rein in the indirect attacks, the attacks in Syria, in Lebanon in particular, to sort of prevent a further escalation? And probably more importantly, will those Israeli ministers return to a wider war in Gaza, including an assault on Rafah, where there are 1.5 million Gazans who are trying to take shelter?
Well, I did want to ask you about Gaza. Hamas has called for more engagement against Israel. Have they benefited from these exchanges between Israel and Iran?
I think for a few days, the Israel-Iran exchanges sort of diverted everyone from Gaza, and in a very perverted sense, it gave a little bit of breathing space, especially to the Israelis, who were under a great deal of pressure um, just before this past week, for example, over the killing of aid workers in Gaza. But no, no one's benefited in the long run in Gaza because we return to this issue of an Israeli open-ended war with no ceasefire in sight. And must I say it, the people who have not benefited at all since October the 7th continue to be the more than 34,000 people in Gaza who have been killed so far, with that number looks set to rise even higher in coming days.
And the U.S. had been urging Israel not to respond to Iran. As you said, this wasn't a huge response, but does it say something about the U.S.'s influence on Netanyahu? The fact that they
It does
responded
say
at all?
something. Yeah, well, the fact that Israel responded in such a choreographed fashion, in a way that the Iranians immediately said, we won't retaliate, did show how not only the United States, but the international community can have some leverage over those in the Israeli government who really were ready for this direct war with Iran. They have been outnumbered, as it were. The question here is that international community, and in particular the United States, either cannot or does not seem to want to exercise influence to limit what is happening in Gaza. So even if the international community, I think, has shown in a constructive way what can be done to de-escalate in terms of the Israel-Iran confrontation, it's not actually exercising or able to exercise that much more influence in a hot war that will continue for weeks, maybe months, with many civilians being killed in Gaza.
All right, Scott Lucas, thank you so much for your analysis today. Again, that was Scott Lucas, professor of U.S. and international politics at the University College Dublin's Clinton Institute.